Hey y'all, welcome to TXT Tells All, or welcome back if you're one of our subscribers. So today if you haven't been following the trial of Darrell Brooks, we have come to a conclusion. The jury deliberated and there's a verdict. So we're going to talk about it. Darrell Brooks is now convicted of killing 6 people in the Christmas parade in Wisconsin last November. 6 people died, including a child, and I think about 60 people were injured, including 18 children. So, really tragic story. But Darrell Brooks, is the defendant that was charged with the crimes and now convicted when he ran through the parade and killed those people driving his SUV. But he has been highlighted in the news over the last 3 weeks because he chose to represent himself, which is basically called pro se, which is declining to have an attorney, because even if you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you by the court in criminal litigation. He declined that and decided to represent himself. So he went through a 3-week trial, charged with 6 counts of homicide. I think 71 other counts, different to different other charges, and he represented himself. He did his own witnesses, his cross examinations. You guys have probably seen it, or at least seen clips of it. So I wanted to get on here, since the verdict just came out this morning around 10:45 in the morning, and talk about it. We know what the verdict is now. If you don't, he was found guilty on all counts, on all charges. Let's talk about jail time, sentencing, possibilities of appeal. There's so many different levels to this. But before we get into that, I did want to, of course, address that these people were murdered. I mean, these are people's loved ones that were killed. It's a serious circumstance, and it really is unfortunate that they had to go through this, because not only had they had to go through the death of their loved one in such a tragic and horrific way. I mean, you're at a Christmas parade, everybody's out there to have a good time. It's crazy. Like you really, I feel like, I always say this, I feel like you really can't be anywhere safely now. And maybe that was always the case, but now with the social media, with people recording things on camera phones, you're seeing all the horrible things that happen in the world. So just imagine, God forbid, you're at a Christmas parade, some type of outdoor celebration, and somebody just comes and plows through with their SUV, killing you or injuring you or your loved one. It's crazy. And I mean, it seems like this is something that now we're hearing about over and over again, right? If you follow our channel, I also covered the story about Nurse Nikki out in LA, who that's Nicole Linton. She was a nurse from Houston, Texas, but working out in California, who ran through an intersection and killed people. Then you have Beatrice Bujold. I'm sorry, y'all. That also ran through like a farmer's market or something like that. Larita has been following her case, so check those out. She actually had an attorney and went with the insanity plea, which got her off. But it's been a lot of tragedy with these types of horrific situations that you really don't have any control over. So with Darrell Brooks, in the end, at least these victims' families can see some justice, and the victims who survived, but I'm sure have PTSD from the incident that they endured. At least, in the very least, they get some justice, because he is going to jail for life. The charges that he has, that he was found guilty, carry mandatory life sentences. So it's interesting that he would choose to represent himself when the stakes are so high. He was not found to be mentally incompetent to stand trial, so there's no insanity defense here at all. He represented himself and he got found guilty. So sentencing will be happening pretty soon, and he will be going to jail. But before we kind of get into, the verdict and deliberations, and I want to show some of the different antics that went on during his 3-week trial, I do want to recognize that, the 6 people who were killed Jackson Sparks was 8 years old. And there was Tamara Duran, she was 52. Virginia Sorensen, 79. Liana Owen, 71. Jane Coolidge, 52. And Wilhelm Hospital, 81. So, I mean, those are the 6 people who really are the tragic victims here. My prayers and thoughts go out to their family because losing a loved one is horrible, especially in that way. And they had to relive this throughout, I'm sure the criminal process, but also this litigation that has been plastered everywhere on the news. So let's watch first. One big thing is that Darrell Brooks has been giving this judge, Jennifer Darrell was her name, the judge who presided over this case, such a hard time. And she has literally painstakingly went through this trial, trying to make rulings on his countless objections, trying to conduct court in a way that would avoid a mistrial. So what she didn't want, and what I feel in watching some of these clips, is that Darrell Brooks would get off on a technicality, a mistrial, because he wasn't afforded justice, just like an attorney would have opportunities. Even a pro se defendant who is incarcerated has to have the right opportunity to represent themselves, has to have access to research case law, access to their files, even though they're incarcerated. So the people who are operating at the jail and at the courthouse, and especially the judge presiding over the case, have to be very, very careful, even in a difficult situation like this, that they don't do anything that could give Darrell Brooks grounds for a mistrial. So that's what they do not want. And that's what I think the judge did not want in this case. So she was trying to make rulings on each and every one of his objections. But if you guys haven't seen it, he made so many objections that they actually had to move him to another courtroom. She didn't want to hold him in contempt and delay the trial. Most of the time, for us attorneys, if you don't know, I'm an attorney and Larita is an attorney as well. Most of the time, if we act up in court, we will be held in contempt, meaning we will be put in jail. You cannot yell at the judge. You cannot be disrespectful. There's a certain type of decorum that is required in court, and if you don't, the bailiff will gladly escort you to contempt, holding in jail. But I think she avoided doing that in this case. And then one of the ways to do that was to move Darrell Brooks from the main courtroom into another courtroom so that she could utilize the mute button. And basically he appeared on Zoom in some parts of the proceeding because he just would not allow the judge to continue with the proceeding. So I'm going to share my screen with you and show you an example of what I'm talking about here, how he talked to the judge. I mean, being an attorney, I practice in both state and federal court. This is crazy to me. I mean, obviously he's not an attorney and he's representing himself. And I think part of his goal was to disrupt court proceedings, but this is not acceptable. If you've never been in a courtroom, this can't be happening. So I'm going to share with you my screen and show you how he was talking to the judge. It's pretty insane.
Related to the jury instructions, sir.
Yeah, I got requests. It ain't like they're gonna be honored though.
As it relates to the jury instructions, sir, what are your?
I heard what the hell you said, man.
Well, Mr. Brooks, that was very disrespectful.
Yeah, and I've been getting disrespected since the beginning of this whole process. So welcome to the club.
Mr. Brooks, do you have any requests?
I'm tired of my race being trampled on here too. I'm tired of it too.
Do you have any requests as it relates to the jury instructions?
Ain't nobody understand why I'm frustrated. How you gonna sit up here and make decisions based on what you think I said when I didn't get consent for you to do any such thing?
So I understand you may be upset, and I really do, but I've made my determinations.
You don't understand nothing. You don't understand anything, Your Honor. You don't.
I'm going to mute him again because he's not answering the questions that I'm very clearly asking him. And I've given him 5 opportunities Mr. Brooks, do you have any requests as it relates to the jury instructions? I'll unmute you for that answer.
I can't hear everything you're saying.
Mr. Brooks.
So let me stop the video. So y'all see how he's banging on the desk. He's yelling at the judge at the top of his lungs, and she's just kind of really trying to stay calm. Like, Mr. Brooks. And if you saw, she said, I gave him 5 opportunities to respond to the question, and he hasn't responded. She's putting all of that on the record for a reason. In trial, both criminal and civil, everything that each person says in court is being taken down by a court reporter, stenographer. So stenographically, they're taking everything down. And so that's so there'll be a record of the trial. And if there is an appeal, that record will be used to make determinations on whether the judge abused her discretion. Hold on, y'all. Technical difficulties. Let me make sure you guys can hear me. Hey, Sharon, thanks for joining in. Let me know if you can hear me at all. Is that better, or can you not hear me at all? Let me know. Hopefully you guys can hear me, but let me know if you can't. I'm going to speak up. Hopefully we're not having a complete technical difficulty where you can't hear me at all, but let me know. I'll try to speak up. Let me know if you still can't hear me. So my volume up. So yeah, so he's screaming at the judge. He's doing all of these things that are not okay. And a lot of the conversation before the guilty verdict was, is this going to work? Are all of these antics going to create so much commotion that the prosecution is not able to prove their case, and the jury is somehow going to find reasonable doubt and acquit? That was the question. Obviously, we got the answer today. The answer is no, because he was found guilty on all counts. But, the jury deliberated for 3 hours, which is not that long. I mean, there's been jury deliberations for way longer, but it wasn't like 15 minutes. Let's just turn right around. However, that 3 hours, because they did have 76 counts to go through, and there are forms that the jury foreperson has to sign on each count. So honestly, even if they really knew what the decision was going to be based on the evidence that they heard, there could have been some sort of delay for those 3 hours just to get the paperwork done. But Darrell Brooks, I will say, he did try to create some reasonable doubt in his closing argument, even though the judge said she was striking some of these statements from the record. He did say, what if the car had malfunctioned? And what if this wasn't intentional? And what if, speeding through the parade, it was something to do with the car, that it wasn't his intent to actually mow these people down in this parade. And so he was asking those questions to do his best to try to create some reasonable doubt. The judge said that those statements would be stricken from the record from his closing argument, but the jury still heard him, right? So I don't know, if we'll be able to hear from the jury. Was there any doubt in their mind that they should render a guilty verdict in this case? We don't know. But one of the other ways that the judge tried to, control the courtroom is by giving Darrell Brooks an objection sign. And some of y'all may have seen this. So they put him in another courtroom like I just showed you, but they also gave him a sign to hold up when he had an objection, because he was just objecting so much that they couldn't get through any testimony. So I'll show you one clip of that. In one of the days of trial, he put the objection sign. I'll show you. Hold on.
In this case, charges that Darrell E. Brooks, on or about Sunday, November 21 of 2021, on Main Street in the city of Waukesha, Waukesha County, Wisconsin, did recklessly endanger the safety of Maura Gilchrist under circumstances which show utter disregard for human life, and while using a dangerous weapon, contrary to section 941.30 sub 1, 939.50 sub 3 sub F, and 939.6.
So he's in the other courtroom, and that's the objection sign that you saw him holding. He just decides, well, I have a continuing objection. So that was one of the issues in the case is he would just object to everything. He objected during prosecutors' closing arguments. He objected throughout the course of testimony, examination, and cross-examination. So they gave him that sign, and then he just held it up the whole time. So it was just a lot of ridiculous antics going on, but it clearly didn't work. But I had a conversation with some other attorneys, and they were like, well, he probably knew he was going to jail, you know, on a life sentence with all these counts of homicide against him. And he was just like, look, I'm going to put on a show before I go out. Of course, that is not the way the justice system should work. I mean, people obviously have the right to represent themselves, but it's really not smart. I mean, if he had an attorney representing him, I'm not saying that he would have been found not guilty for sure, but he would have definitely had the advantage of having somebody who knows the procedure, who knows the loopholes, who knows the possibilities on appeal, who knows how to create reasonable doubt. I mean, he's clearly not an attorney, and he really just honestly did himself a disservice. I mean, he killed those people and he deserves to get the punishment that's coming to him, but representation matters. Sharon asks, has he been deemed as mentally ill? He has not. He did not. He was not deemed mentally ill or incapacitated. He was found to have the mental capacity to stand trial. So he was not, it was not like a Beatrice Bijou, I always mispronounce her name, but Beatrice that Larita covered her case, she was found to be mentally incompetent. Her insanity defense worked. She had attorneys representing her, even though she was actually attorney. She did not represent herself. She had attorneys representing her, and she was able to get off on an insanity plea. So just shows, I mean, he seems like he's insane, right? The way that he's carrying on in court. I know during one of the portions of trial, he was saying to the judge, you know, have I been discourteous? Have I dishonored the court? And I just showed you the clip where he's, you know, screaming at the judge. So somebody had commented, you know, how can you be so unaware? And it kind of lends to, well, is there some type of mental incapacity there where he's not seeing himself as we see him? He has some type of issues going on. Can't say, I mean, I'm not a mental health professional. Maybe he does have some, but the level that is needed to be competent to stand trial and to be found that he knew he had the intent and he had the mental capacity at the time to meet the elements of homicide, he was found guilty. So his mental state, that's not something that he argued, and it's not something that was found by the court. So, you know, even in the very end, he was still trying to, you know, be combative with the judge. Today, this morning, right before they brought the jury in to read the verdict, he asked the judge if she was going to make a ruling on subject matter jurisdiction. I won't get into that and how that does not make sense at the end of a trial after the defense rests and the prosecution rests. All the evidence had been presented to the jury. They had already deliberated, and he was asking the judge to make a ruling on subject matter jurisdiction, and she said she absolutely would not. And this is the clip from that I'm going to share with you guys really quick. This was today, like right before the jury verdict was read. Let me show y'all that.
I don't have to answer those questions as a public servant, Your Honor. So are you going to act in dishonor?
Mr. Brooks,
Are you going to act in
I've
dishonor?
already addressed your requests.
It hasn't been proven for the record, Your Honor.
The jury is on its way,
They're not out yet, though.
but they're on the way.
You held me in contempt.
I'm not
You held me in
addressing these
contempt
matters,
before.
sir.
Have I acted in dishonor, Your Honor? You held me in contempt without me being in dishonor. How have I dishonored the court? Have I acted in dishonor? Have I rose my voice or argued with Your Honor? Have I disrupted the
Mr.
courtroom
Brooks,
in
you're
any way?
back in this courtroom at your request. The jury is coming
I
up.
never should have
Please
been.
be respectful of their time and
I
of this
have
process
been. They weren't
and
even
the
out
dignity
before.
of the proceedings.
Okay, y'all. So that was the clip I was talking about where he said, you know, did I dishonor the court? Did I disrupt the proceedings? Yes, Mr. Brooks. You literally have been disrupting the proceedings all the way through. Sharon asked, was it stated why he didn't get an attorney? You know what? That's a good question. Now, I know he had, under the law, he had to have been afforded the opportunity to have an attorney. Either if he could not afford one, he would have had to have been appointed an attorney before his criminal proceedings began. He can decline that representation. So I didn't read specifically into what was said by him as to why he didn't want legal representation, or even if he started the legal process prior to trial with an attorney and then decided to just be pro se at trial. But I know from our laws, you have to be at least afforded a attorney, the opportunity to be represented in court. So I mean, if he wasn't afforded that, that would be a serious miscarriage of justice. So the way that they have been trying to be super careful with this case, I would be surprised if if they missed that step. I doubt it. I think he just decided that he wanted to represent himself. He probably thought in his mind that he could present the best case, or that he, had certain things that he wanted the jury to hear, and he didn't want to be controlled by legal representation, because obviously if you're represented by an attorney, although technically in a way they work for you as the client, we still have to be able to do our job. And if we can't do that, then we'll be going to the court for a motion to withdraw, which means to get off of your case, because there is a disconnect and we can't have effective attorney-client communication, which doesn't work anyway. So I don't know if he had been assigned. That's a good question. I'm gonna look a little bit into that, and maybe I'll do a follow-up live when he does get sentencing, even though I think I know how that's going to go too. But I will do a follow-up, and that would be interesting to find out if he did ever have an attorney, and if the attorney withdrew and he decides to proceed by himself, or what happened. So that really is the end with the Darrell Brooks trial. It was a very, very long trial. I personally think the judge deserves some type of kudos for how she handled it, because I think she did do the best job possible under the circumstances. From the clips that I saw, I did not watch the entire trial proceeding because I saw it on Crime and Law. It was running live, a lot of the proceeding anyway. I didn't watch all of it, but I did watch a substantial amount of the clips, and I think she did the best that she could with Darrell Brooks. I mean, he will go down in history for multiple things, unfortunately, but killing people is one, and creating a ridiculously trying trial is two. Hey, Roxanne, thanks for joining in. Roxanne said it's hard to believe that his family wasn't able to convince him to get an attorney. Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm sure people did try to tell him, including the court, warning him about, not having an attorney and the risk that you take when you do that. But I think, judging by how he acts and, kind of his steadfastness and stubbornness, that he probably felt, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going for it. And on top of that, he may have known in the back of his mind the chances of him getting off on these 6 counts of murder, including this 8-year-old child, was slim to none with the evidence that they have. And he was just going to put on a show. If he was going to go out, he was going to go out swinging. And I mean, he's going away. So it's really a tragic situation all around. Many, many people hurt. But he's going to jail. So, but it'll be interesting to see if, he tries to appeal, on what grounds, if they have any merit. So we'll see. Appeal will be done on the papers, but we'll see what happens. So that is it. That is it for the Darrell Brooks show for now. We'll get to see what the sentencing is like, and then that'll be the end of this story. But y'all, thanks for joining in. I just wanted to hop on here quickly in the middle of the day, since this verdict came out 10:45. I saw it and I couldn't do a live then, but I wanted to touch base with y'all before the day was over. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We post new videos every single week. And if you like this video, make sure you hit the like button. Oh, and also, yes, hit subscribe so that you know when we post new videos. Hopefully you guys are getting our notifications so you know when we post new content. All right. Y'all have the good rest, a good rest of your week and enjoy your weekend. Talk to y'all later.